I remained silent for 7 days. He begged for my attention. 7 days. That was all it took for everything to change. Not because she learned a manipulation trick. Not because she watched a video promising instant obsession. Something deeper happened. Something most people never talk about. She stopped fighting for attention that should have been given freely. Do you know what hurts the most? It is not being ignored. It is waking up and realizing you built your peace around someone else's response. Your mood depended on a notification. Your value felt connected to whether they texted back, called back, cared back. And that is where the trap begins. She thought silence would destroy everything. She thought distance would make him forget her. She thought that if she stopped reaching out, she would lose him forever. But what if the constant chasing was the very thing making her lose herself? Sometimes God does not answer through immediate comfort. Sometimes He answers through uncomfortable silence, through unanswered questions, through moments where you are forced to sit alone with your own anxiety and face a truth you kept avoiding. Who are you when nobody chooses you for a moment? That question terrified her. Because deep down, this was never only about him. It was about fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if she stopped trying, nobody would stay. Then something unexpected happened. The silence that was supposed to break her began exposing what had been breaking her all along. And what happened after those 7 days was not what she expected. Not even close. The silence that looked like punishment was actually protection. At first, those 7 days felt unbearable. Every hour felt longer than it should. She checked her phone without thinking. She replayed old conversations in her mind. She kept asking herself the same question. Did I make a mistake by going silent? That is what nobody tells you about emotional attachment. You do not only miss the person, you miss the routine of hoping. You miss the illusion that one message can fix the emptiness you have been carrying. She believed her silence would push him away forever. But something strange started happening. Without the constant pressure of trying to be understood, she could finally hear her own thoughts. Without writing long emotional messages, she noticed how exhausted she had become. Without begging for clarity, she saw how much confusion she had been calling love. And that was painful. Because sometimes God protects you in ways that do not feel gentle. Sometimes protection looks like distance. Sometimes protection looks like the removal of what you were emotionally addicted to. She was not being punished by silence. She was being pulled away from a cycle that was quietly destroying her peace. Then a terrifying realization hit her. What if losing him was not the real fear? What if the real fear was learning who she was without needing his attention? When you stop explaining your pain, the truth begins to show. She used to explain everything. How she felt, why she was hurt, why his distance affected her. She believed that if she found the right words, the right timing, the right emotional honesty, he would finally understand. But understanding was never the problem. The problem was that she kept trying to convince someone to care in the way she needed. And that changes a person. You start editing your feelings to avoid looking needy. You start accepting crumbs because you are afraid of asking for consistency. You start carrying conversations, carrying emotions, carrying a connection that was supposed to be carried by two people. Then she stopped. No long messages, no emotional reports, no desperate attempts to create closeness where effort was missing. Just silence. Not coldness, not revenge. Silence. And silence has a brutal way of revealing truth. Because when you stop explaining your wounds, people show you whether they were listening to your heart or just enjoying your availability. That was the moment she noticed something uncomfortable. She had been fighting so hard to be understood that she never stopped to ask a different question. Why did love require this much convincing? That question changed everything. Because the moment you stop proving your worth, you begin seeing who only valued your constant presence. And what happened next forced her to face a truth even deeper than rejection. The emptiness she feared was not only coming from him. His absence exposed the empty space inside her. This was the part she did not want to face. It was easier to focus on his silence than to examine her own loneliness. Easier to blame his distance than to admit how dependent she had become on being emotionally chosen. Because the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes you are not fighting for love. You are fighting against the feeling of being alone with yourself. The moment she stopped chasing him, something unexpected surfaced. Restlessness, not because she desperately needed him back, but because she no longer had distraction. No constant waiting, no analyzing messages, no emotional drama to keep her occupied. Just her thoughts, her fears, her unanswered questions. And that can feel terrifying when your identity has been tied to someone else's attention. She started noticing things she had ignored for a long time. How much of her self-worth depended on being wanted. How quickly her peace collapsed when someone became emotionally unavailable. How often she called anxiety by the name of love. That realization hurt more than his silence ever did. Because now the problem had a mirror. But this is where healing quietly begins. Not when somebody returns. When you become honest enough to admit that no relationship can fill a space inside you that was starving for self-respect, purpose, and peace. Then another shift began. For the first time, she stopped waiting for a message to rescue her mood. And that changed the direction of everything. When she chose God before his response. Something changed when she stopped making his attention the center of her emotional world. Not overnight, not dramatically, quietly. Instead of reaching for her phone the second anxiety appeared, she sat with the discomfort. Instead of searching for hidden meanings in his silence, she started asking deeper questions about herself. What am I really afraid of? Why does this feel like survival instead of disappointment? Why does one person have this much power over my peace? Those questions opened a door she had been avoiding. She realized she had been praying for him to change, while ignoring the part of her that needed healing too. So she shifted her focus. Less obsession with getting an answer, more honesty with God. Less emotional bargaining, more rebuilding her inner life. And little by little, something unexpected happened. The panic lost strength. The need to control the outcome became weaker. She started feeling moments of calm that did not depend on a message, a reaction, or reassurance from someone else. That was new. Because when God becomes your source of stability, people stop feeling like oxygen. You still care. You still feel. You still love. But you no longer collapse every time somebody becomes distant. And right when she began recovering pieces of herself, something happened that she never saw coming. He noticed the silence. He begged for her attention, but she was no longer the same person. Then it happened. The message, the curiosity, the sudden attention that used to feel impossible to get. The same person who once seemed comfortable with distance was now reaching out, asking questions, searching for access to the version of her that had always been available. Months earlier, this would have changed everything. Her heart would race. Her hope would return. She would read meaning into every word, every small effort, every sign of interest. But something was different now. She was different. Because healing changes what impresses you. Attention no longer felt like proof of love. A message no longer felt like salvation. Being wanted no longer erased the memory of confusion, inconsistency, or emotional exhaustion. And that is powerful, not because she became cold, because she became clear. She realized that the greatest miracle was not making him notice her absence. It was discovering that her peace survived without his presence. That changes the way you love. You stop chasing certainty from people who give mixed signals. You stop abandoning yourself to keep somebody comfortable. You stop confusing emotional hunger with connection. Maybe that is the lesson hidden inside those 7 silent days. The real victory was never his reaction. It was her freedom.